Thank you for joining us on Rise Positive Birth Stories.
Yeah.
I'm here with Nadia. You're going to tell us about 2 birth stories.
Yep.
Okay. So just take us through what happened for both.
Okay. My first birth was 7 years ago. My son Declan. I went through most of my pregnancy sort of feeling like whatever happens, happens, it's fine. So around 6 or 7 months into my pregnancy, you, my sister, and my sister-in-law you were pregnant, and our sister-in-law already had kids, and we're talking all about the science behind it and natural births and all these things, and I realized how very undereducated I was. And so I got nervous, I had a moment, and then I decided I don't have the time to get super educated, so I am going to spend a little bit of money to have somebody in the room with me who's super educated. And that's when I decided to look into doulas. I was so fortunate to find somebody who my husband and I got along with immediately. She's the only person we interviewed, loved her. And so she came along with us for the rest of the journey, got me a little more prepared. And then...
What kind of prepared? Like mentally or physically? Or
mostly just, I think mostly mentally. She made me really think about like, what do I want for a birthing plan?
Okay.
Where I was kind of like, whatever happens, happens, and rather than saying like, maybe I have more control over this than I originally thought. So she just asked a list of questions that just got me thinking, do you want smells? Do you want music? How relaxed do you want to be? So we went through a list of different questions, what I wanted, and got a little bit closer to what I needed. My husband also, I think, was really helpful to think through like, oh, this is a lot. This isn't just like showing up. We should really think through it. So my plan truly ended up being, I just wanted to go as long as I could. I knew if intervention came early, that probably meant problems later on, and I was really trying to avoid having a C-section. I would say that was kind of the basis. I didn't think a whole lot other than that, but I secretly really wanted to have a natural birth, but I didn't want to put the expectation out there,
okay.
Which is really silly, but true. And so I just said, as long as I can go, I would like to not have any drugs until I ask for them. And that's what we went in with. So then the birth?
Yeah.
Okay. So the birth, I started laboring at home. Actually, we were at a farmer's market at 8:30 in the morning. It was a Saturday morning.
Okay.
And it was the first time I was walking, and I was like, oh, I actually have to stop to get through a contraction. But
Did you know you were in labor when you were at the market? Or did it start while you were there?
It started while I was there. So,
okay.
And those were the first ones. So
okay.
I was like, okay, this is the start, but I don't think I have to rush to the hospital.
Okay.
And so we just kind of kept walking around, went all day, went most of the evening, and then around...
Continuous, or it was just kind of like start and stop?
Pretty continuous, but the first ones were like every 10 minutes.
Okay.
So it took a long time. So probably by 6 or 7 at night, I'm still home. I was probably getting closer to that 3 to 4 minutes apart. And so I was like, okay, I really think it's been all day. This has to be happening. And then at 9 o'clock, or 9:30, I can't quite remember, they just stopped.
Okay.
And I remember just crying in the shower because I thought I was going to be having a baby. And our doula was actually about 2 hours away with family. She started driving home, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's driving home, and I'm not even gonna have this baby. I'm ruining everybody's weekend. This is so dumb. And so I felt really bad for myself. And so doula came in, talked to my husband, and was like, tell her to take a shower, try to get really good rest, because she's gonna be having a baby. If it's not tonight, she's gonna be having a baby soon. So just tell her to take advantage of the fact that there's no baby coming. So that was good perspective, again, instead of feeling bad for myself. So we went and laid in bed. It was now like 11:30, and then I had one really bad contraction and my water broke. And so then we're like, okay, game's on, like 2 minutes apart. It was happening fast.
Right away after the water broke.
And so we went to the hospital. I was the first one to check in at midnight. I clearly remember that.
Okay.
And the front desk thought that was like a really great fact, and I was like, I just need to find somebody and like get into a hospital room.
Okay.
And then my doula was there, so thank goodness she came back. And I labored for about 5 hours, and throughout all of it, she was awesome. I was having a lot of back pain.
Okay.
So what was wonderful is a lot of times like would be sitting on an exercise ball. She would help me through my back pain, so behind me, and then my husband, for whatever reason, I always wanted him in front of me, like kind of holding my hands, or I could squeeze his arms or whatever, and so that's how I got the contractions. Really, it was like a 3-person project getting me through it. And then it was at 8 centimeters where I had that moment of, I can't do this. This is way too hard. I am in so much pain. There's still like everything left to go. And so I said as much, like, I don't think I can do this anymore. And so my doula, bless her heart, said, why don't we try a bath? And if you're still feeling really bad, after that, we can talk maybe another option. So I said, sure. And I got into the bath. Unfortunately, it wasn't a big bath where you could really float. It was truly just like a bathtub with a shower. It was big, but not big enough to like really get the benefit. I didn't know that at the time. But so I got in. I was like, this isn't helpful at all. I don't like this at all. Get me out of here. So I got back out. But what had happened is I started shaking so badly because I was so cold. And then
You were cold.
No, when I got out of the bath.
Okay, sure.
And I also think you can shake in labor as like a thing. And I just remember thinking, nobody's sticking nothing nowhere in my back.
Oh,
Because I was for an epidural, I'm like, no way could somebody actually get that correct. And then the thought never crossed my mind again.
Okay.
Like, I never thought about drugs after that. I was just like, there's no way they could give me an epidural now. I guess that's that. And so I don't know how, but that was that. And so then I ended up laboring for, again, probably just another hour. I pushed for about 45 minutes to an hour. I think it might have been up to an hour. That was pretty terrible. Didn't love that part at all. The pushing. And I think part of the reason, which is really interesting, is one of the nurses had said, like, I think this is gonna go fast. And I just wish she hadn't said that.
Okay.
Because then I had in my mind, like, oh, everything's going good, it's gonna go really fast. And honestly, an hour, probably your first birth is probably fast, but it didn't feel like it, and it felt like a lot of work, and I think that was part of it. But then once I was really close, and I kind of knew, and it was really, really hurting until I got close, and then it was sort of like, I know this is happening, and something kind of changed a little bit, and then he came out, and it was like the best feeling in the whole world, like physically the best feeling in the whole world, that I didn't have to push anymore.
Okay.
And then had my little baby, and he got to stay on me for a while, no issues, everything was quite wonderful, so that was great.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to walk us through the second birth as well?
Sure. So then my second birth, Eli, he's 4.5 now, so 4.5 years ago. Our first doula ended up moving. We ended up with a different doula the second time. What was really wonderful about her, actually, is she was also a chiropractor. She was a chiropractor first, and then fell into the doula business because one of her patients asked if she would come with her to a birth. And so she was great because there was a really nice blend of the medical, the birthing side of it, but also the science behind like your body and how it moves and adjusts. And so I really, really appreciated her like expertise in both areas. And so she gave me really good advice that I would give to other moms having their second baby. Is somewhere along the line when we were meeting ahead of time about my birthing plan or what I wanted, she said to me in a very polite way, this birth is not your first birth. And so like think about everything about your first birth, remember everything, and then sort of store that away
Okay.
and move on now to this birth and really focus on this birth. And I think that was really nice because I thought everything was going to be the same, but she really put in perspective that it's some things could be the same, but you really need to think about this baby now versus the baby you already have. And so I think that helped me a lot. I also think with the second birth, I was smarter about the support I think I needed.
Well, interesting, because you had the doula the first time.
I had the doula the first time, but I didn't know how to ask for help the way I needed to.
During labor?
No, after labor.
Okay.
So my biggest struggles were actually after the birth. I was very, I feel like lucky to have such a wonderful birth, but the recovery surprised me.
Okay.
And I didn't really ask for a whole lot of help. I'm like, yep, everything's fine. Even to the doula, I said everything's fine.
Okay.
And I don't know that everything was always fine.
Okay.
So second time around, I was like, told my husband, I need you to check on me. I need you to have water by me all the time. I need you to just be there a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the doula too, like, I think I could have used more support, but I don't know what that meant.
Okay.
And so she knew going into it to make sure post-birth that I was also okay.
Okay.
Anyway, back to the actual birth.
Sorry.
So Eli, he was a little bit faster. I was kicking the soccer ball with my first child, and I kicked it, and I was like, oh, thought I just kind of tweaked something, but it was actually my first contraction.
Okay.
And then we kept playing, and I was like, is this it? I was 4 days late at this point. My
Okay.
first came 10 days early.
Oh.
Second came 4 days late. And so at this point, I'm like, let's get the show on the road. So anything, I was like, oh, it's happening.
Okay.
Second time, so I'm still kicking, and then I was like, whoa, I think these are already like 5 minutes apart.
Okay.
So it, like, once it started, it just, like, we got going. So that was like 3 PM. My husband was getting his haircut.
It sounds like a weekend again.
Friday
Okay.
afternoon.
Okay.
Husband's getting his haircut. It's now like 4:30, and I'm like, my contractions are about 4 minutes apart. And so he mentions it to the woman cutting his hair, and she's like, we gotta go. And he's like, no, we got plenty of time, as if we're like pros at this. And so he sat and finished up his haircut while I was laboring at home. We got our first baby. Grandparents took him, so then it's just us at home. We're laboring. It's now probably 7 or 8 at night, and then I decided to call. This time I have a midwife. So we had moved. I'm now working with a midwife group. My favorite one happened to be on call, which is great. And just her hearing my breathing while I went through a contraction on the phone, she's like, yeah, I think it's probably about time for you to come.
Okay.
But she said, let me call you back. I think the hospital might be full.
Okay.
And so then she calls back, and she's like, yeah, right now there isn't any room, but they can't say no to you, so if you want to still come, you can come. The other piece I didn't...
What did they do with you? What does that mean?
So I guess they can't turn anyone away if you actually show up,
Okay.
but she was also kind of warning me, hey, there might not be any rooms, I'm not sure if you want to show up.
Okay.
I don't know. So then I also should mention my doula, the chiropractor doula, who I love, is in another birth.
Okay.
So I'm actually at home laboring, talking on the phone with the backup doula.
Okay.
She's lovely. I've never met her, and I'm telling her if it feels like I have to poop or not when my contractions are happening. I'm like, nice to meet you. Let me tell you all the details about what's happening here. So that was really uncomfortable. But she was great. She knew what she was doing. I trusted her immediately. And like, if the person I trusted trusts her, fine. And so anyway, so she's helping me through. Now I'm finding out the hospital is full. So then I cried hard because I was like, what am I supposed to do? So they were going to send me to their sister hospital, and I remember her saying that, and I was like, oh, so will you meet me there, the midwife?
Okay.
And she's like, no, I can't go there.
She can only practice.
She can only practice at her hospital,
Okay.
even though they were like partner
Sisters,
hospital, yeah. And so she told me the name of the hospital, and I go, and then I just started crying. I go, I don't even know where that is. Like, I don't even know where the hospital is.
Yeah.
And so we called the doula back, and she's like, well, do you have to go there? I actually have this wonderful hospital who's known for, they always have a midwife on 24/7.
Okay.
So she's like, let me call, let me see who's on this doula said she only takes clients if they will deliver at this hospital. That is how much she thinks this hospital does a nice job. So I was like, let's go there then. What's the difference to me? I like it now. You just find it anywhere. So she called the hospital. She let them know I was coming. She said her favorite midwife was on call, which was great. Okay. They had a birthing suite waiting for me. So
very smooth then.
Very smooth until we got in the car and there was road construction and my husband ended up having to go over a median while I'm holding onto the handles of the contraction. Like, it's the stuff sitcoms are made of.
Okay.
And so, yeah, but yes, once we finally got there, as I was walking up, even the front desk was like, "Are you Nadia? Are you the one who needed to come here?" So they just swept me in. This room was incredible. I finally had a bathtub that you could actually float in. So now I understood what it meant to bathe, or not bathe, but use water. Yeah. But they were very clear, you can't actually have a water birth here because we know nothing about you. And you didn't sign all the papers and all the things. Okay. And then, which is fine. That wasn't my intention anyway. And the only funny thing about having to go to different hospitals, they didn't have my blood type on file. Okay. And so in between a contraction, which was kind of awful, they were like, "No, we're going to take your blood." So they let me have a contraction. I understood it. Mm-hmm. But what I would say is that same technician or whoever came back to get more blood, and I didn't quite understand what happened, but the midwife took her out into the hallway. And what my doula and my husband said was the midwife took her out and was like, "Don't come back. Okay. You don't need any more blood from her until after this baby is here. And if anyone has a problem, if anyone has a problem, they can come talk to me." Okay. And that was one of those things, I didn't know that happened at the time, but that is why you have a support group. Because I'm already in a place where I'm at a hospital I didn't know. I should mention my doula actually ended up coming back because the other mom, things were taking too long, so they were going to let her sleep for the night. Okay. So I ended up having my doula back. I ended up having a midwife that was fabulous. But it's just I think it's
a different team than you were expecting, yeah.
And it's the mindset of midwives, it's the mindset of doulas that they're there for me, they're not there for the hospital. And that was a perfect example of why even that mentality matters, even if you don't know the people perfectly. Okay. It felt very different than being at whatever doctor I would have ended up getting, having a midwife in that moment. Yeah. So anyway, I get out of the bathtub because I was too far along at that point. I think were getting nervous about me being in there.
But did you feel like you needed to push already?
Not. Yeah. I actually think I did. I think that's why they got me out. So when we actually arrived at the hospital, I was 7.5, they said, centimeters, so 8 centimeters, pretty far along. I essentially went into the bathtub, loved it this time around, got out, and at this time I sort of just knew I wasn't going to have drugs. Unless something was going to happen, I was just like, you did it once, you're doing it again, let's go. My playlist for music was pump up music this time around. So there's certain things where I was like,
it changed it.
Yeah, this felt like a sporting activity, which not to downplay it, but just I was always competitive, I always played soccer, and so that felt like the mentality I wanted is let's go, it's game time. Which is so weird, but it works.
It's not. I mean, I don't think it's that weird because it is a lot of physical work.
It's physical work. It's
and
not
it gets you in a mindset too, okay, I need to get all the way. It's as I say, running a marathon or something.
Yeah.
I need to get all the way through, and I know I just need the mindset.
Yeah. So I had my playlist going. We actually switched from kind of calm music I liked to when I got out of the bathtub. We honestly had a playlist called, I think it was Game Time or Baby O Game Time or something. Okay. So I switched to music to sort of just let's go. And this birth it was definitely faster, but it was different, and in some ways it felt like it hurt more, but the pain was quick, if that makes sense. So
more intense perhaps.
It felt more intense because I think it all just happened faster. I think it was more intense because it wasn't over 12, 18, 24 hours. It was over 7 hours.
Okay.
And so what was funny about all of this though is I didn't realize my water hadn't broke until my water broke. And I was like, what was that?
Okay.
And they're like, your water broke. And I just like slipped my mind that had never happened. Because my first, it happened at home, which I know isn't super common. And then with my second, it happened, I'm guessing 20 minutes before I had them.
Okay.
Like right at the end. So I sort of like forgot that whole process didn't happen until it was like a whole thing. And then I pushed. This time I really wanted to be on my back, and I know you and my doula as well were like, why? But that's just what felt right to me. That's what made me feel comfortable. But this time around, instead of like kind of pulling myself up, I had people help me, and then I could really go back and rest, and then I'd come back up in between.
Okay.
And so I ended up pushing him out that way. And again, everything went fine. They put him on me. And then I would say probably, I can't even remember now, but I feel like 5 minutes later, I bet, they're like, let me just take him for a minute. He wasn't breathing quite right. And they like patted his back, and then I heard a huge cry, and then he was fine, and then everything was fine. So it felt like a little bit of a snag, but nothing serious. And I got to spend like that skin on skin time with him. He took to nursing right away, all of that. So again, a wonderful second labor, but the thing that was hardest for me was recovery afterwards, because I think there's this perception since the labor went so well, that like, great, it was easy, everything's easy. But I think I always get frustrated by the fact that like, even if you have the best labor, the recovery is still hard. Like it's still all hard, even when it's the best. And I think that is something like, that's where you need your support, is just to like recognize it's okay that this is hard. It's okay that recovery takes longer than you think. I think we don't talk about it. It's just like women do it, and we're supposed to just like be quiet about it and be good about it and like get over it, rather than like, no, this is a feat and we should be proud of it and we should like celebrate it, versus like you're supposed to just do it and not complain. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's not spoken about enough.
It's not spoken about enough. The hard parts aren't spoken about enough.
And there's kind of a lack of awareness as well, that should be the expectation. Like, you need extra recovery time, you need to have extra support around you.
Yeah. Even when it goes well. I think that's what surprised me, even when it goes well. Because even though my labors went well with my first baby, I didn't hit anybody's radar for anxiety, but I definitely felt it.
Okay.
And I didn't understand or recognize or realize, other than my doctor saying like, I wasn't hitting the list to need anything, but it was still a real thing to me. And I didn't have any real coping mechanisms to help me. Where second time around, I was like, I think I was really anxious the first time. So just be aware of that. Let's talk about it this time. But I had to bring that up. People weren't really bringing it up to me unless I was like going to hurt my baby or going to hurt myself. It was like, either you're so extreme, rather than like, I just had serious hormones going through my body. And I would have loved a little bit of like normalcy around that, that it's still gonna feel different. I didn't feel like myself for the first 6 weeks with my first baby. And I can tell when it kind of switched back. Like the hormones, like where I felt like I could have a little more control over it. Like I'd be worried about the weirdest things, like really bizarre things that I was like, and I looked it up and was like, this is for sure anxiety. Like thinking about things that are gonna happen all the time.
Like worrying about accidents and whatever else.
Yeah, like driving for the first time, a lot of people say, so that feels like too real or too common. But another one was like, if somebody came in the house to take my baby, what am I gonna do? And like, how am I gonna, like, and I wouldn't just like think about it, I would play the whole thing all the way from start to finish, every scenario. Like I'd be sitting there for 20 minutes thinking about this same thing, where I had never had that experience sort of in my normal life, if you will. And then after that 6-week time frame, never sort of went down that rabbit hole the same way again. It for sure was something going on.
And did that happen the second time as well?
No, second time was fine. So I think each pregnancy is really different, and you can't expect the same or the different. But I also think I was prepared for it.
Okay.
Different the second time. I think
And you were asking for the support.
and I was asking for the support, it just didn't happen. It didn't happen in the same way. I don't think I needed as much support the second time around, honestly.
Okay.
I think the first time something was a little bit, my hormones were something was a little bit off. I think it's scarier the first time too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's all new.
everything's new. Where second time I felt way more confident and way more prepared. Like I gave myself the time to take baths. Like that's the stuff that I didn't do the first time. I made sure my husband did stay home with me 2 weeks straight. First baby, he went back to work 2 days later.
Yeah.
You know, things that I was just like, yeah, it's fine. He took a day off every day of my maternity leave, which was kind of nice because I'd always he would be at home. So he split up his
Like
leave.
once a week, you mean?
Once a week, he would
Okay.
stay home on Wednesday so that my week was split up. So it sounded great in theory. But the first time around, I really probably needed him those first 2 weeks.
Okay.
Second time around, I probably could have used to help once a Wednesday.
So you just mentioned a bit of how you prepared differently for the second time. Was there anything you did for the first time besides hire the doula? Like, was there extra readings, or was there something that you were making sure you did for preparations?
Honestly, the first time, not really. I kind of was going into it blind, which is why I freaked out at the end. I just sort of always had the thought, and what you see on TV is like, you go in, you get an epidural, and I didn't put much thought into it, and that's the real truth. I didn't put much thought into it. It was like, most people I knew got an epidural, most people I knew were fine, but then enough research was starting to come out, and I had people in my life who knew a little bit more, and what really caught me was that C-sections go up at the end of doctor's shifts, and there's actual science behind that, or like numbers behind that, and that's when I was like, whoa. Like that was the thing that actually got me to something's off.
Okay. So what do you think helped you the most?
With my first birth, it was probably the fact that I think she's the reason I ended up having a natural birth. When I was at 8 centimeters, I really felt like I went far enough, that's okay. Like, I'm not gonna have a C-section now. You know, I sort of was rationalizing it all, like, and honestly, probably would have been okay. Like, everything was moving, whatever. So I was like, that's what I wanted. But the truth of it is I really wanted to have a natural birth. I really thought that would be, you know, pretty badass to like have a natural birth. And so for her to say, why don't we try the bathtub first? She got me to go just that little bit longer, that it all of a sudden just didn't become an option. Not because nobody said it was an option, it just was no longer an option for me.
Okay.
And so I do think hiring a doula is the reason I got the birth plan that I wanted. And so that's a big deal. It's a really big deal. That's for my first, that's what helped the most. And for my second, the physical part that helped is actually having a chiropractor. I had sciatic nerve issues during pregnancy. And so she would adjust me, she just knew a lot about it, and within 6 weeks of my pregnancy, it was gone for the rest of the pregnancy.
Oh, great.
So that helped a ton. I think my hips just adjust just a little bit wrong when I get pregnant, because it happened with my first. I didn't realize that's why there are things to help you as a pregnant woman if you actually just do a little bit of research.
Yeah.
So that was one, and then I think with her, I don't know. I think she was just really supportive. I don't know what helped the most. I think she helped my husband a lot after the first one to just be more supportive. I think they got along really well, which was really helpful to me. That she would actually text him things like, "Have you checked on her today? Make sure she gets a bath." And so they were doing that behind the scenes a bit, so that he could really support me, but she was really supporting him in a lot of ways the second time around, because I knew a lot of what I needed anyway. But she just made my experience that much lovelier once I actually got home and things like that.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And what was your biggest surprise with either the birth or births in general?
My biggest surprise was the first time was the recovery. How hard the recovery was for having such good births.
So how did you feel after the birth? For either birth?
Yeah, I'm telling you, I think I talked a little bit about it already, but with my first, not great. I didn't feel great. I felt anxious. I couldn't believe it was so hard to sit down. I had
Did you use like a donut?
No, it wasn't even that bad. I only had 2 stitches. That's what I'm saying. Like, I just thought I was gonna go home like, you had a natural birth, you only had 2 stitches, everything's great. You rocked this. And then I got home and I was like, this still really sucks. And so that, my association with how good your birth is to that means your recovery is gonna be like simple was totally incorrect. And even with a doula and all of that, I don't think I recognized the best labors, the best birth, you're still gonna have a serious recovery. And then I also felt like you can't complain about that because there are so many births that are so much harder, right? Like if you have a C-section, that's a major surgery. If you really tear, like I just remember feeling like, this is the best that women get? This is the best? Like while I'm like trying to sit down, like this is the best.
Okay.
And so that really bothered me for whatever reason, is we don't talk about how bad the best is. Because I'm very aware and grateful for how great my labors and births were. But pregnancy was terrible for me. And afterwards wasn't terrible, it was just worse than I expected. And that part really surprised me and kind of made me angry.
Yeah.
Tell.
Yeah. Still.
Still.
How about like right after the birth when you had your child on you or something?
Oh, sure.
And that you had accomplished your...
I felt great. I think that's what the concern I had going home was because I felt so good there. Like the first, with Declan, my first birth, it was wonderful. He got to stay on me skin to skin. There was no issues for either of us. He actually latched on quite quickly. I just remember feeling kind of like a superhero. Like I felt good. I felt really proud. I felt so happy to have him. I forgot to name him. Like somebody finally had to ask me because I could care less. Like I was just like in my own little bubble world. Who cares what his name is? This is my baby now. So like wonderful. It was really, really wonderful. And then my second, right afterwards, again, I said he had to be taken for a little bit, but even that hardly, like I was just on cloud 9, that hardly even bothered me. Like looking back, I'm like, really, what happened there? Like they were pretty stealth about it. But same thing, I just was like, here he is. And I remember the next morning when my first came, so it was my whole family finally. And I remember laying there, we were all in the hospital bed together. And I felt so strongly like, this is it, this is my family. And I still feel that way, like that was it, no more babies, that's my family.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so strongly, like I felt so, the hospital, when I was in the hospital, I always felt great. Like I thought everything was great.
Nice. Yeah. And do you have advice for other mothers while they're on their pregnancy journey?
If something's, yeah, lots of advice. If something's bothering you during pregnancy, like sciatic nerve, like nauseousness, all of that, like seek help, ask for things. There are a lot of things out there if you actually take the time to look, like a doula, having somebody to talk to. Don't think you have to do it all on your own. I think realizing that your partner should be there to help you, and that should be the expectation. If you don't feel like you're getting it from your partner, I did. I was very lucky. A doula can help you, your midwife can help you. Honestly, your doctor should help you too. Ask questions of your doctor. I think if they're uncomfortable with a doula, that's a red flag. My first birth, I had a doctor, and she was like, "Yeah, whatever you need." She goes and she delivered at 2 hospitals, and she said to me, which I thought was interesting, "I would recommend you deliver at hospital A instead of hospital B because the nurses are more used to seeing natural births.
Okay, yep.
Hospital B, everybody's like signing up for C-sections, whatever. Not really, but that was sort of the impression I got.
Okay.
And so she actually guided me to what hospital I should deliver at based on nurses too. So I thought that was an interesting layer to think about as well.
Yeah, the support team all around.
All around. So when the head nurse or the nurse that had me for my first birth, she came in, she's like, "I see that you want to do a natural birth. I think that's awesome." And I was like, great, like this is, I'm in good hands.
Yeah.
But that's all by chance.
Okay.
Because it's not scheduled. I did check in at midnight, and so I happened to have Henrietta, who like thought natural births were awesome. But there is a little bit of that you do want that whole community of people supporting you to really actually support you and your plan, not support like being on the clock and wanting to be done with your plan. So those are kind of the big ones. And then I think afterwards, like the hormones are real, the pain is real, and to give yourself some grace. I was so ready to just be done with it. Like, I have a baby now, I should be able to move. And really, we study so hard on the labor and the birth as we should, because it's a really big deal. But the recovery is a really big deal too, and your sanity is a big deal, and being able to take care of your child is a big deal. And so I think kind of, not to add more to the list, but to kind of think through maybe 3 to 6 weeks after you have that baby and what your plan is, I think is helpful too. And lastly, if you're nursing, have water anywhere you will sit down. Have water anywhere you'll sit down. You just need to drink water all the time. You're so thirsty.
Is that the same for both of yours?
Both of mine.
Okay.
Both
I
of
had
mine.
a lot with the first, but not the second.
I'd wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh my gosh, I can't even swallow.
Parched.
I'm so parched. Yeah. So that second time around, my husband literally everywhere I sat, there would be a jug of water. So those are my pieces of advice.
Great. Well, thank you. Anything else?
No. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing with us.
No problem. Are we going to know our sisters?
It might be a bit obvious.
Okay.
So what were you apprehensive about with either of us?
I just realized that if I wasn't going to take care of me and my baby, I also didn't feel confident that the doctors were going to.
Okay.
Like, I had this trust in the health system that I don't think was warranted.
Okay.
And I hadn't, luckily, needed medical attention in a serious way like my entire life, other than like getting my appendix out.
Okay.
And so like I just don't know a whole lot about the health system, and so I just thought I could trust them. And then the more information I got, there's a documentary with Ricky Lake, I'm forgetting the name of it.
Business of Being Born.
Yes, so that is actually one thing that we watched after we had hired a doula, and I was like, yeah, no, okay, so like we for sure are happy we got the support. So that I did, and maybe a little bit of reading. I honestly can't quite remember, but I didn't spend a ton of time educating myself. I more threw money at somebody to be there to educate me should I need it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the truth of my first birth.
It's actually, did you know that I hadn't heard of a doula before you had hired one?
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like, I knew lots of things about birth and
Yeah.
I was interested, but I didn't know what one was until you hired one.
That's so funny.
Isn't it?
Yeah. That's bizarre.
And I love that you hired a doula just for the information and education, because that's how I thought of myself when I first started as a doula. Like, this is why I want to be a doula, to get information out.
Yeah.
How funny.
Or just to protect me if something goes wrong. If everything goes right, everything went right. Technically, I probably didn't need her. I did need her for massaging my back. For sure needed her for that. Like, that's the bonus, right? Like, it's not just the information, it's also like in the moment. She is the reason
She's physical.
that I had a natural birth.
We can do treat her little bit.
I just wonder if it's
Can you shut the door? Game time. Ready. This is so boring. Who's gonna listen to this?
Everyone.
Nobody.
No.
I'm hot.